Hello everyone, and welcome to Jeff is Awesome Part 1. This is predominantly just a quick run-up for a couple of friends who are learning the Jeff, and nothing much more than that. Jeff is pretty an easy bird to start. She's almost an amalgamation of what an F-18 did to an F-16 one night in a very drunken haze, and the Jeff is what is born. She's pretty basic, pretty simple, relatively easy to fly. She has some nifty things that a lot of aircrafts don't have, and she does some things some craft just plain out can't do. But she's kind of like a jack of all, master of none. Unless you're talking about the GB6 SFWs, which everyone enviously hates and loves all at the same time. Now, to start the Jeff is pretty simple. She's really like just a couple of toggles.
Warning.
And because I don't want her whinging in my ear all the time, and because we're trying to be as quick as possible, I use the Stream Deck to shortcut a lot of the stuff so I don't have to go hunting for it, especially in this F8 menu system. What I want, F6, so my memory's a bit, get a park coordinates. Gonna want those, because if you fire up normally, she has a two-stage modes of INS alignment, fast alignment, which is about 30 seconds, gives you a very basic alignment. But the one we always want is ground crew alignment, because that gives us the most accurate alignment possible, which is 4 minutes. Specifically like this because I do a lot of CAS work. Occasionally I might do some cap work, but it's predominantly CAS work, and I prefer to have all my stuff landing at the right coordinates. So done. Remove that, otherwise you can't eject. Plug these two puppies in, otherwise you will pass out at altitude. Oxygen on, NKU, click, and because I just like to be dangerous and live on the ground. Simple bird. Well, she's good, she's up and running. While this is still doing its alignments, we'll call up the ground crew and we'll load up a CAS strike, SEAD strike ability. It's been a while since I've had to use buttons. I already have predefined loadouts for these, so depending if you know what you're going to hit exactly where it is, because the map is called out for CIA bombing targets, especially on the blue side, then you can just use those pretty accurately and you can just fly in with the jammer system. But if you don't actually know where it is, then this is my preferred loadout for SEAD. So 2 lots of anti-air short range, and then the 2x2 harms missiles with the GB6 SFW and the WMD-7 pod. And because I'm playing Iranian, I will put my Iranian tags on. Auto waypointing 199. Set for slave master plus. That's my data link, because I like to be in certain modes for certain things. Back to INS. And once the map system is piled on, we'll be able to see more info. IFF, and then it's just a case of waiting for stores to go in. While stores are going on, this is what my usual SEAD setup is. I go find out where I'm meant to be fighting for the day. Don't need none of that, because normally I wouldn't see these, because on the TGW server we don't see the opposing forces, but here I can. If I didn't know where they were, but I knew what island was be sweeping, I would usually create waypoint systems. So I can actually see that there's a hawk site here, and then there is stores here. So I'll be using the SEAD to suppress the hawks, and use the GB6s to suppress the helicopters that are down there. What are they? I think they're... Oh, H1s. Okay, fair enough. Little itty bitty cobras. And this is stupidly easy. If you just... It's just so easy in the Jeff. There's PP1. And then I'll put PP2. And just in case there's a bit of wind which I didn't account for, which is always a possibility, PP3. And some flak, which we're not really overly concerned about because we're not going to be low enough for it to give a damn. Alignment's not complete yet. Oh, no, it just went complete because the HUD letters come up. And now we can tick that. Cool, everyone's happy, everything's settled. Now that also means we can now bring the map up. This map is like one of the best maps in any of the aircrafts in the game. It's just outstanding. Even comes with your MGRS setups as well. So you can make quick calls if you have to, if you're flying with other people in your group. And then you can dive down a little further, but we'll probably sit around 60 because that should be enough. Jeff does run a data card system, so unfortunately you do have to have certain things. You have to do certain procedures. Data cartridges have to be ejected, which is ejection system here. Canopy has to be fully open, and then you make a request to the ground crew. Update data card. Again,
Copy.
I usually have all these
Updating
bound on my
the
stream deck, so
DTC
I just push button sequences and it just sorts it out.
DTC update complete.
Cool. Once I've got the card, I just punch it in. It will then preload and go, yes, I wish to load everything, navigation, stores, and the rest of the information. This will also pull my PP waypoints.
Warning.
Okay, so I've now got a config.
Warning.
Happy sealed. If you're
Warning.
not sure what the warnings, she'll whinge about a lot of things, but Susie's pretty good. So canopy config over here is air to ground stores pages. These are just G limiters. They just stop you from overGing. Jeff is is the only aircraft in the game that I still know of that still has G stores. So if you don't have that set correctly and you over-G the aircraft, your stores won't come off. They just sit there. You can't even jettison 9 times out of 10. So they will fail to jettison. And you can end up with a very lopsided bird. So there's not much point in doing that. Okay, always flick to air-to-air mode at least once. So at least it takes these PL5s out of standby. Powers them up. And also, if you had the SD10s on, you'd also cycle to the SD10s with the cycle stores weapon button. So they will wake up as well, because otherwise if you had to switch them suddenly and try to use them in a dogfight, you would lose like 3-4 seconds of waiting. And you know, 3-4 seconds against something like an 18 or 16 can be just death. Then we flip to a store page. Depending on the configuration and loadouts, the Jeff prefers to always be in, like, it prefers same stores. So if pylon 3 has a GV6 SFW, it would prefer it to be the same on the other pylon. You can mix and match, but you then start restricting your loadout settings. Oh. So the GV6s don't really have GV6s have 2 mode, PP node. So 2 mode is just target of opportunity. Because we're running a pod, you have to turn this puppy on. Okay, if you press this and nothing happens, it means you've not enabled this puppy down here, CLDP. This one is for the jammer. So out of habit, I'd usually roll down this panel and go click, 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 because there's no disadvantage not having these. These 3 do not exist yet. So ERTS, HMD, and ACMI. Doesn't exist, so we don't get them. Much to our enemies' delight, and more to my annoyance. Because the 2 I'd really love to get my hand on would be HMD and ERTS. You know, PL5's not that amazing. It's a good missile, but it's just, compared to the 9X, it's just not that amazing. Depending on how I configure these, I have lots of different setups. So generally, because these are 2x2 stores, so 2 GV6s, so that's one cluster group and that's another cluster group, the LDs. So you can click there, or you can do cycle stores, and you'll get a page change. And you know, harms need to be turned on, and then they have a 5-minute and 30-second alignment, just for them to pull data from where they are in the universe, and from the aircraft. Okay, so it's pulling from the aircraft this time. Cool. Okay, act is at the waypoint. So I've already put down 3 waypoints, so PP1 to PP2 to PP3. Now these are waypoints 36, 37 and 38. Just engage this guy, infrared SP, and we'll just bump the game back up a little bit. If you come up, so it's a little hard to see because it's out here, but as we get closer, 37, the targeting pod just moves ever so slightly because it's all bunched together. So I'll use 36 because I know I'm dealing with a hawk sight first before I can deal with it. If you don't deal with the anti-air suppression systems first, then you have a good chance that, you know, your big floating GOSO originals may not make it through, especially if you've got something like a Roland sitting down there. These guys, these harms, have about a 40 nautical mile range if you're launching them from about 30,000 feet. The other thing that will stop them is a timer. So they have a battery timer built into them, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. But usually you'll get 40 nautical miles out of them at 30,000 feet, and especially if you're sitting around 0.7 plus mark. So you can launch them in pairs, or you can launch them in single. As long as you don't jump store types or store classes, so if you don't cycle between A3 and A4 suddenly, it will always go 1, 2, 1, 2. I always have this, so I actually have a button set up so that I can push my stores and cycle between, because sometimes you might be engaging a SEAD suddenly, you might be engaging a ground target suddenly. So I always have this set for SP, self-protect. So basically, the thing that has locked you up, it will go to. Just be aware that if it is a friendly unit locking you up on the ground, it will turn 180 and go right back at it if it's behind you. So SP, so always just make sure on your HSI here that's actually telling you what it's going for. ACT will fly towards the waypoint, and then once it gets within about 10 to 15 nautical miles, it will activate the tracking system and start hunting. So one of the advantages of that is that sometimes, especially on GGW servers, their activation time is like nearly half. So the radar system will shut down and wait for you to fly within half its maximum scan range, and then suddenly turn on, and then suddenly you've got missiles coming up, you've got radar pinging off you in no time flat. So one of the things you can do is you can, if you know you're 40 nautical miles away, so you go to 39, and you can go, right, I'll just launch one of these, then count to 10 or 15, then launch the second one. And it will fly towards this point, and then it will get close enough, and even if the radar system isn't passive, it will try and tag it, and just slam right into it. And then that just leaves you 2 more for if you need to self-protect, so in case he's got something else more nasty hanging around suddenly. So I like to fling the ACs first. So which one's what? So one is 2 mode, and then this will be, I'll set this as PP mode. So the nice thing about this is pre-planned, and we can set this to 2. Direct fuse, GV6, yeah. You don't need to arm the fuses on this stuff, it's already pre-done, not like the 18s and 16s you always have to come in here and go E-fuse and then nose tower. You only need to do that on the bomb stuff for the Jeff stuff. So, pre-PAM, so this is action 3, so pre-planned 2 bombs. Go up to controls, and here we go 36, so 36 means it will hit the hawk sight. 37 and 38 means it will go towards the helicopter pad. And as you can see, so we're on wing 3, and we'll set it for 37. Now, in the Jeff, before the last patch, there used to be a button here that used to tell you go to the next store page, or the next stored weapon. It's gone, but this button still functions. So it leaps across to pylon 5, and we go, okay, we want that to hit number 38. And what you do is you get these dotted lines, and this dotted line basically says go in this direction and you are outside of this range. Once the line goes solid, it'll go, okay, now you're within range to release your ordnance. This is really useful for if you're doing sneaky things like bringing up LS6s, which is the glide bombs, 500 kilo glide bombs. And you can carry 4 of them on the Jeff, and you go, you just tag it down the middle of the runway, go, 36, 37, 38, 39. You set your waypoint for 36, you set the LSs for 36, 37, 38, 39, and then you just go for the furthest waypoint down the runway. So my 36 is always my furthest away target. So that way I know that when this line goes solid, all the other munitions are well within range. It's just this very last one that is the one of the glide. You can set angles and offshots, so you can say to come out one way and then come back in. But I find it gets a bit twiggly, especially if you're drifting. Like if there's a secret Hawk site or Roland site to one side and you don't know about it, so you could end up having a bad day. But that's anyway. So 36, 37, 38, so control. And then I just roll through and start setting up because the other ones the other settings for these I don't care about. I only care about the two. The first one, S1, which is 2 mode. So target designation, or target of opportunity, which I'll use the pod for if I have to. And then pre-plan mode, and then the other one I just leave in 2 mode just in case I have to cycle back to it. Now for the harms, ACT first, and then I'll go for self-protect. And then depending on what mood I'm in, I might switch to pass. But seriously, you only use pass if you're not being tagged by anything friendly. Because if anything is lighting you up, it will try and go around. So it's basically going, I'm passively hunting for things tagging the plane. So generally I don't even bother anymore. I've had too many accidents when I first had the machine. So that's pretty much it. Now it's a case we get the hell out of here and get off the ground. Flaps, brakes off. Give me power. Nose we're steering on. And because I put it right nearby, it's not going to take us that long to get up there. Yeah, sure.
Field 1-1, request takeoff.
The Jeff is only a little bird. It's no point joking about it. She is only a little aircraft. But because she's only a little plane, she does have some advantages. 5,000 pound gas tank doesn't seem like a lot, but as long as you're not abusing the afterburners, it's actually quite reasonable. The good news is, little gas tanks mean quicker to fuel, so you can actually do some very quick circle cycle fights and get up and get down kind of work. The Jeff is annoying for some people because the Jeff doesn't need to do in-your-face fighting. It can actually do a lot of standoff equipment. And the Jeff just has so much information. G limits. This literally up here is my fuel system. Down here is my afterburner. So if you can't hear this click, you can always just glance and see if it's in burners or out of burners. Has a great attitude hold system. So it will literally hold that attitude for as long as it can, as long as it has the speed available. So rate of climb of roughly 4,000 per minute, 420 knots, doing 067 LD. So the LD is in pass mode, which I sure as hell don't want. So go over here, go away. Because we're in mode 6. So mode 1, there we go. And the alignment's complete. If you don't do the alignment, the worst you get sometimes is just the missiles will just wander off. They just won't go in the direction. The alignment's really more for the ACT mode than for pass or self-protect, because pass and self-protect just come back at themselves. Alright, so already been told that we've got a Hawk threat. So that way, and off we go. And because this is pretty much a get up and get going, we'll just burn the gas until we get to about 3,000 pounds, and then I'll come out of it. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Jeff's weapon pod, one of the cleanest, crystal clearest weapon pods in the game. As in, like, short of potentially what the F-15 is going to be bringing out, also the F-15E, it is the cleanest pod in the game. The downside to it, well, you know, it obviously suffers the same thing that all pods do. At 40 nautical miles, we can't see anything. But also, it doesn't have ground stabilization. You literally have to walk it back until you're at 21. So you can ground lock targets at 21.9. But anything past 21.9 nautical miles, and it just won't work. As we bring this up, let's bring this slide back in. So we can lock and stabilize, lock and stabilize, lock and stabilize, and then once we hit there, now I can't lock, and it'll just keep drifting. So if you've ever flown the 16, 18s or the A10s pods, you're like, oh wow, I miss having that. Because it also means you can't do things like mark designate properly. So you can go here and go, okay, well, there's something down here. I want to come back to this later on. You go, right, I'm going to mark that. So you go up here and you go mark, and it's not an overflight, it's a designate. And then you go mark again. So now, when I push back on this, this will go out towards my current waypoint. But if I go to waypoint 41, it will now instantly slave. The one thing I really wish the Jeff had was a next waypoint toggle button. Because then you could literally just fly up, tag everything, and then just wrap 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Otherwise, if you were dealing with things like GB6s or LS6s, you have to either manually move the TGP, or you use the waypoint system, which means you come up here and you go click and you go, oh okay, then that one, and then you want that one, which is why I have a Stream Deck XL, and I actually have all this UFC already pre-bound, so I can actually bang it out on my left hand and then use my right hand just to fire and pull triggers. But oh look, fog in the canopy because we've gone up so high. You don't get this in other aircraft at the moment. It's only in the Jeff. Because no matter what people say about it or what people think of Decker, these guys did good. I mean, they did real good. And then we got to come down here and we got to flick this puppy. Usually no more than about 30 seconds, and then this will start clearing up. Fuel state, oh, 3,000. Coming out of burners. And once we hit 30,000, we'll just kick in the attitude hold and attitude hold. Great thing is that setting, the altitude and attitude hold, can be actually slaved to buttons, so especially handy if you're doing cache work, so you can do cycles, so you can look at something or put yourself over into a bank and turn, and it will just keep running around with it. Okay, range to target is 32 nautical miles. If you're ever looking here, you can also see it down here, 32 at 226. And because we do know there's hawks down there, so we're just going to go ripple 1. Give it some time. Then we'll go to the next one. Now, depending on the airspace, okay, I'll now stick this into an altitude hold, and the panel's slowly clearing up. Depending on the airspace, so if you're playing on the TGW server and you're flying as red, you know that there are 18s and 16s and 15 up all the time. So depending on what you're trying to get away with, you're always will try and you just won't bother engaging. You'll just rotate out and just wait. So you launch, especially with a Patriot system that's usually at Kasab. Like if you're at 3,000 feet at 40 nautical miles, it will start tagging you at roughly 42, I think she launches on you. And then you just count to 15 seconds, launch an LD-10, because by then you should be about 38 nautical miles in, and then just rotate out, drop chaff and flare occasionally, and as long as the Patriot's still launching on you and locking you, then great. It just gives the LDs more bang for the buck. Yep, so because they were in ACT and you gave them the distance, the first one went for the first radar, and once that disappeared, the second one kicks over and grabs the next one. That should be enough to render that Hawk sight useless. Should be, being the operative word here. And we're masked at the moment, so eventually we will come around and be out of the cycle. Or I could just break us out now and just come over. Hey, my cockpit's cleared up. I can see again. No, there must be still another antenna down there because it's the Hawk sight is still tracking. Range 30 nautical miles. You know what? Have another one. And this is where I'll cycle to 37 and have a look. Helos are still on the deck. And because I don't want to be... The Jeff does not like being asymmetrical. So...
Tracking.
Oh.
Tracking. 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 Tracking.
Then I'll switch to this. So...
Tracking.
Oh, missile launch.
Tracking. Tracking. Tracking.
Come around, come around. Nope. No, the pod's still trying to stay on it.
Tracking.
Whoop. There goes a Hawk missile. But he's about to have a very bad day. Very bad day. Just need to shut the system down. And that will just render those missiles useless. That should shut it. Yep. And now we're clear. Now there's no more Hawk tracking. So 4 missiles, 4 hits. 4 trackers down. Jeez, I put that down thinking it was just a small battery. Turns out it wasn't a little battery, it was a bigger battery. Alright, so I'm cranking so hard that the TGP can't keep up with the stabilization, so. Rightio, so next part. So we've done that. And now it's slapping helicopters on the ground time. Okay, what altitude we at? 28. We're at 29 feet. So that's the eyes. So I'm just waiting for this line to come down. Once that little line crosses the threshold, then I know I'm good to launch. Because it'll just go solid. So that line is completely dependent on speed and altitude. So if you go fast and you're very high, then those JSOs or GB6s will have the range to go all the way. Unless of course someone shoots, you can chase them down with AIM 120s and such. So if you can get the lock on them, you can shoot them down. So. And I try and give them as much speed as possible. And that's it. They'll be on their way. Because I've done that, I've now taken the
Warning.
limiter out. So, shh. That's it. Job's done. Chicks in the mail. Now it's just a case of going home. This is usually where we RTB because the PL5s, anti-air missiles, are very short range. It's not worth trying to go up and deal with aircraft. Especially, you know, if it's a 15, forget it. It's a 16, 18, well, maybe, but with their AIM-9s, you don't want to get involved because they are like, you only need to be in the first 80% of their height, you know, the hemisphere, and your ass is just toast. It's just not worth the effort. And depending on where you launch from and what you're doing, sometimes you can actually get all the way back to home base and land and then still switch back and watch them go in. So these are very similar to the American JSOs. So we do have a HE version or the SFW. Now the SFW version is very cool because it's basically, it gives it it's basically a CBU-97. But it gives you the ability to launch them from a distance. Because the CBU-97s, you have to overfly your targets. But with the GB6s, that fixes that problem. So you can scream in, fling them, and unless there's a Hawk sight or a Roland sight down there to try and intercept them, then they generally will hit. They come as a cluster munition and they come as an anti-armor munitions, which makes them great, especially when you want to wipe out an airbase. You sit there and you start hunting everything out, and then that's pretty much it until we land. And because I can just do this. Super speed times 10. Can we go faster? I don't know. Can we go faster? Oh, and the nifty thing too is when you set your DTC, it also sets 00 or 5, or usually 50 is your way home. So usually flip to navigation mode. Navigation mode will generally show you your nearest friendly airports. So 00 is always home. 50 can sometimes be home, depending on what mood it's in. And by mood, I mean whatever the game wants to feel like giving you. So where am I going? Where am I looking for here? Oh, because I'm looking at 37, so let's go 00. Where have you gone? 00. 00, would you like to talk to me? No, you don't want to talk to me? Fine. Fine, 00. We'll take 50 then. There you go. So it's telling me that's 50 nautical miles at 012. It even gives you a steer cue. And then once you cross over it, it'll tell you, oh look, there it is. This is where a full ground alignment's good. If you do a short one, sometimes you'll find that box is skewed off the runway system, so it's not in the middle of the runway, it's like it's off to the side. So a full ground alignment's always handy. Plus, yeah, it's only 4 minutes, and usually 4 minutes you're still putting stores on, you're still looking at the map, you're still planning your PP points, and such, or your waypoint, or route points if you're using anti-ship missiles and such. Anti-ship missiles are hilarious, but it's only because they're pretty quick and easy to deploy. You can like do laser guided bombs into warships, but it's tricky as hell to perform because the CWIS systems on the American ships can hit you at 10 feet off the water. So if you want to do it with a bomb run in, you need to be at 9 feet. The JEF can do 9 feet. The tricky thing is though, you sometimes got to be careful, because if you dip to 8 feet, the JEF can fly at 8 feet, but if the water keeps clipping through the targeting pod or the jammer, you eventually have a crash out. The game will just kill you. It just goes, nah, I can't deal with that. And the other thing I love about the JEF is just so easy to land. Those little flaps. Plunk. It's alright, we don't need that bit where we're going. Wait for the speed to come down. Speed. Nice thing about the Jeff, you can bleed off the speed so quickly. And also, she has some interesting G lockouts. So if you're above 400 knots, you can't get above G6. So it's not bad. It's a good self-protect. Below 300 knots is gear. And because we're in navigation mode, we also get our landing E. You kind of want to stay above 160 because she gets a bit finicky.
Fuel. Fuel. Fuel.
Yes. I know. Now, as Rob would say, well, you could just be on speed from the very beginning. It's like, yes, but that doesn't... See, that's great if you're flying blue. Because the chances of you having something on your ass as you're coming back into land is non-existent. Like, unless it's me in a Tomcat and I'm like 100 feet off the deck and I'm doing Mark 1. But other than that, blue doesn't worry about it. But red guys always have to deal with the potential of the sooner we get down, the less chance we have to worry about you know, being on the radar system, being on Hazel, or being on the other AI AWACS. So the sooner we're down, the better. And of course, being a Jeff,
Warning.
you need this canopy open, you need the card out,
Warning.
otherwise you can't rearm refuel.
Warning.
Shh, it's okay, Susie, we're done. We're done for this run. Now, depending on whether or not it's needed, I can run through the other particular modes, but since this is probably what you'll be running for the night, this is what I would usually have on. And that's it.